Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with Raider Homer and T3RaiderFax. We're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
Always ready to talk Raider football, and man, it's a pleasure to have Drew Buie back to talk Raider football with.
And as you mentioned, we're welcoming back a very special guest as we get closer to free agency, so let's go.
Let's go. Today on the show, we will cover some of the Raiders news from the past week as we get closer to the beginning of the new league year and the beginning of free agency. And then we will welcome back a friend of the show, former Raiders wide receiver Drew Buie.
All right, Raider Nation, we want to hear from you. This is the Only Nation podcast, so we want to hear from the Only Nation. And here's how you can get in touch with us. Give us a call at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. You can leave us a voicemail or send us a text message. We also have some merchandise we can send out to you if you do so.
Here's the latest Raider news.
One of the bigger stories of the past week involved the release of starting guard Gabe Jackson. Even though his name was on the trade block last year, he played through the season. But now it appears that he will be on the outside looking in as the Raiders revamp the offensive line and make some critical decisions during this offseason. Jackson's release will free up $9.6 million in cap space this year, ending his run of 7 seasons with the Raiders.
This is, I think, a mistake. It's not surprising, though, because he was on the block last year. But this guy is a swing guard that can pull and run either way. And we all remember watching him and Hudson pull and just run over defensive backs. So he will be missed, but I guess maybe he didn't have the mindset to, restructure. I don't know what happened there. I would love to see him restructure, but that doesn't always happen. But good luck to Jackson, man, because he played well for the Raiders. He was a tough guy, and I'm always going to remember him pulling out there. Even on the wide receiver screens, you just remember him running out there and running over Charger defensive backs. Those were great years with Gabe Jackson at guard. So good luck, Gabe Jackson.
And he played okay. But I really believe that the Raiders think, and Mike Mayock especially, that they can do better. They can have an upgrade which will cost them less money. In a COVID year that has really impacted the salary cap and will impact the team up and down the line, I think this is the move to make to see if we can bring in a dependable, stable guy at the guard position. And, of course, this is a chance for Mr. Simpson to step it up. So we'll just have to wait and see whether they address this specifically during free agency or not, or during the draft. But it's got to happen one way or the other. So we'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah, change is scary, but, look at the Chiefs. They got rid of their quarterback. His name was Alex Smith. And they let nobody take over for him, and it's paid off pretty well. So maybe it'll be the same for us. The Raiders were really happy with what they saw in John Simpson, and maybe he'll be able to shine more than Gabe Jackson.
I mean, he's gonna have to play well. Maybe they do think that they could do better. Hopefully we can re-sign Good and Simpson and then figure out the right tackle situation. There's always Brandon Parker, right? But, it's going to be tough to replace Gabe, I think. But, yes, it's up to Simpson and Good at this point if Good comes back.
Guard Richie Incognito is also being released. Having stabilized the left guard position in 2019, he missed almost the entire season in 2020 with an Achilles injury. His release would save an additional $5.475 million against the cap in 2021. There has already been talk that Incognito might re-sign with the team for a lower price tag.
And I hope this really happens. This was the one area that I was really worried about as to whether Richie would come back and whether he could come back from the injury, because an Achilles injury is bad enough, but when you're age 37 trying to come back from that, that's something else altogether. Now, I'm hoping that we'll be able to re-sign him. When I say we, I hope the Raiders will be able to re-sign him for a little bit lower money than he would have made, and that he can be coming in to stabilize that line once again and help those other young guards who will eventually have to take over maybe after one more year or maybe this year. So I hope that he just adds a lot more stability. I'm hoping that we can bring him back.
Yeah, he's a must-have, I think, if you're going to let go of Gabe Jackson. You know, he says he's healthy and he's ready to come back. And, yeah, there's the rumor that he's willing to restructure his contract or come back for a cheaper contract. So hopefully he does come back, because then, you know, we can focus with Simpson on the right side at guard, and then maybe even, you know, pull in Good at a pretty decent price and get him to play right tackle and give him an off-season with Coach Cable to practice at that spot, because he did well. He did well.
Yeah, I think this could be a sign that they are looking for money to be freed up to sign Good.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll get Good signed. Hopefully they'll get Nelson Aguilar signed. And then they'll have some money to play with and bring Richie back. So as long as physically he's able to, I would love to see him.
And not just that, you know, they're also freeing up money for Colton Miller. His contract's coming up soon.
A key part of the special teams unit was solidified this week with the re-signing of long snapper Trent Sieg to a new 3-year contract. Sieg was originally signed by the Raiders following Week 2 of the 2018 season, after a brief stint with the Baltimore Ravens. Sieg has appeared in 47 straight games as the Raiders' long snapper.
I'm happy about this. You know, we talked to John Kondo, right? So we all remember when Kondo got hurt and Lee Smith came in. And if you didn't know then how important the long snapper was, you did then. You know what I mean? So it's good that we got Sieg coming back, because, 47 straight games. You know, this team, the Raiders, have been known for, you know, good special teamers. So bringing back a guy that can play that consistently, he's always available and doing his job in the correct way, that's important. That's important. So I'm glad Trent Sieg is back.
From the moment he stepped foot on the field with the Raiders, the special teams has been, if nothing else, consistent. And the production from Daniel Carlson this year, and also the punting, I think you look at the special teams, it is solidified and strengthened by that long snapper in the very center. And he has been a special teamers guy as well, just like John Kondo. He would not only snap the ball, but also be involved in a lot of the plays down the field. So I think this speaks highly of his talent and his ability, but also his work ethic. So I'm happy to see that the Raiders have re-signed him for 3 more years.
All right, and we have some upcoming important off-season dates in the next month or two. I'm just going to go over them really quick. March 9th, which will be tomorrow, after we've aired this episode, it is the deadline to utilize the franchise or transition tags. Raiders probably won't utilize that, but it is the deadline for all teams. And March 15th, the Raiders can start talking to the other team's free agents. So March 15th is the tampering period start. And March 17th, the new league year starts and free agency officially begins. Then finally, in April 29th through May 1st, we wrap it up with the NFL Draft.
There are going to be a lot of free agents available. There's going to be a lot of veterans who are going to find themselves on the outside looking in, looking for a contract. This is where I'm hoping that Mayock and Gruden can pick off a couple of guys who might not normally be on the outside and bring them in. Maybe give them a short contract, but make it work within the cap, particularly on the defensive side, on the interior of the line, and really make things work, and let's turn things around. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Quick question. Would you put the franchise tag on Nelson Aguilar?
Heidi, you go first.
I would say no. The price tag would be very high, and players don't like the franchise tag anymore. It used to be good because it was a guaranteed income for them for that season. But now it's really seen as something that is really a negative for the players. And I wouldn't want him to have that feeling while he's playing for us. There's a chance that we re-sign him before it even gets to the new season. I think the chances are still pretty good. But I would not place the franchise tag on him. I think it would just cost a little bit too much.
For a lot of the same reasons, I'm almost in total agreement with you there. I would not use the franchise tag on him. Hopefully we can sign him for less, but if we can't, there are other receivers out there. There's also going to be a fairly deep receiving core in the draft. So although I'd hate to have to resort to the draft, I'd like to bring in a dependable, proven veteran, but I don't think you overspend for him, particularly at this particular position.
Man, a part of me wants to say yes, because he was pretty good in the deep ball, and we need that back. Of course, we're going to talk about that later on in this episode, so I'm almost saying yes. Even though we might be able to sign him at a cheaper price, if he doesn't want to, go ahead and keep him on your roster, because we've already shuffled so much on the offensive line. I would utilize that franchise tag if there's room for just that one more year, and then let him do what he's going to do after that. But hopefully he resigns for less, and we get But then again, he might be thinking, nah, they could put the franchise tag on me, so he might be playing hardball. Who knows? We'll see. But I definitely think we need him back.
Yeah, I would just love to see him back, period.
Yeah.
No matter how it happens. But I don't think the franchise tag is the way to do it.
And I think he may be betting on himself at this point with the numbers that he put up. I think that he figures there's some team out there that's got the money that's going to pony up for him to give him that paycheck. If that's what he wants, if he is just looking for the most amount of money, I think there is a team out there that's willing to give it to him.
Our guest this week is no stranger to us. We want to welcome back one of our friends, former Raider wide receiver Drew Buie. Drew was drafted by Al Davis back in 1969 and was a starting wideout, along with Hall of Famer Freddie Biletnikoff. Drew entered the league in the last year of the AFL and the first year of the tenure of Coach John Madden. Drew played for 3 seasons with the Raiders before finishing out his career with the Bengals in 1972. Welcome back, Drew.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great to have you on board.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you back.
We are glad to have you here. Very glad.
I can't think of a better place I'd rather spend my time on a Sunday afternoon. My wife's downstairs, and I'm talking to you guys, so I'm good.
Awesome.
There we go.
All right, I'll start it off with the questions, Drew. Drew, things have changed so much with off-season training regimens. Could you give our listeners a sense of what off-season conditioning and routines looked like back in the day?
This is probably going to be very shocking. I'm going to go back to Catawba College. I graduated from Catawba in 1969. There was 0 weight training. Now, I was a wide receiver for Catawba and also played corner. Return punts, hardly ever came off the field. I was one of the last 2-way players. And we had no weight room or conditioning program. When I got to the Raiders in 1969, we had a defensive lineman named Tom Keating, who was an All-Pro a couple of times. He was like 6'2", 255, and he lifted weights. Our best wide receiver, Fred Biletnikoff, also lifted weights. And we had a linebacker, Chip somebody, his last name escapes me right now, but they were the only 3 guys on the Raiders who I knew lifted weights. Now, in my last year when I was with Cincinnati, the Bengals were installing a weight training program. And I think I went to 1 or 2 weightlifting workouts, and they were using mostly Nautilus machines. And that would have been 71, 72, somewhere in that area. The conditioning program that I went through high school, college, and most of my pro career was on my own. I ran, I did a lot of distance work, but I was a sprinter, and I spent most of my time working on starts and sprinting, and naturally push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, those kind of exercises. Now, this may be the shocking part, even more shocking than what I just said. I spent many a morning or afternoon with my wife in the car behind me, following me while I jogged, and I would smoke 1 or 2 cigarettes while I was jogging. and then I'd get to training camp and run a 4.35, and it didn't matter. The probably 25 to 35% of the professional football players when I played smoked. And I would be shocked if there was any that smoked now with the education and so on and so forth that we know now. I knew it wasn't good for me, but I knew I wasn't going to get any bigger. I was 6'2", about 175 pounds. I wasn't going to get any bigger until I got older, and then it's easy to put on weight. Y'all don't know that, but you will when you get older. So, Heidi, to answer your question, if I was to compare the late 60s, early to mid 70s to where our professional football teams are now, you can't compare. There's no comparison.
It really sounds like it. Difference between night and day.
We've all heard the stories of Fred Biletnikoff, ralphing and then smoking a cigarette before he hit the field. Were you smoking a cigarette with him before y'all hit the field?
He and I were the last two out of the dressing room, and he was in front of me, and I was behind him, and we followed our cigarettes out. Now, please understand, I love Fred, and I don't know if he'll ever hear these stories or not, but he would probably agree. When he got on the field, he was as good a football player as there was on any field that he ever played on.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say there's a reason why they call it the Fred Biletnikoff Award in college.
Yeah. Okay, now that Tom Flores is in the Hall of Fame, finally, can you think back to the most memorable Raider induction, the one that has stuck with you the most?
There have been several. One that's really striking to me is that Daryl LaMonica is not in there. I'll just mention that first. He was my roommate for basically 2.5 years, the Mad Bomber. Did a lot of great things with the Raiders, and I would love to see Daryl in there. And if I missed on that, I'm sorry, but I don't remember him being inducted. But John Madden really stands out in my mind. I played for John his rookie year as a head coach, was my rookie year as a player. I think he was, y'all are very good on numbers and statistics, but I think John was like 32 years old, a really young man, and was quite a player. And I think he hurt his knee. I believe he was with Philadelphia, but he was quite young, but he had total command of our teams and just did a wonderful job. The Tom Flores induction probably stands out more than any other because, Heidi, you mentioned it shouldn't have taken this long. One thing I'll say about Coach Flores, he was position coach my third year with the Raiders. And he was an NFL quarterback, had a great knowledge of the game. His demeanor was wonderful. He was mild-mannered, soft-spoken, very kind, and he could get you told if he needed to get you told, but he did it in a very respectful, professional way, and I can't be happier for Coach Flores for him to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. More than deserving and more than overdue, right, Heidi?
Oh, yeah, definitely overdue and very, very deserving.
We all agree on that.
Absolutely. It was an honor to be able to talk to Coach Flores, so I can't imagine what it was like to play for him. Because, yeah, his demeanor is very soft-spoken, but you can tell that people, would live and die for him on the field. And, man, he did some spectacular things on the field. Like you said, quarterback, won the Super Bowl, of course, with the Chiefs, but came back and won a Super Bowl as an assistant, 2 as a head coach, went on to become a broadcaster for the Raiders. Such a great career. GM as well for the Seahawks. So it definitely is way over.
What took so long? I'll never understand it.
Right. All right, so when the Raiders missed the playoffs in 1971, what was the mindset of the team to make it back the next year? What does the current team need to do to make it back to the playoffs?
Okay, I don't want to be boring here. This is kind of difficult. That time in 71 was very difficult. When that season was over, I would say that our team was stunned, embarrassed, shocked. But when we came back the following year, I really had some concerns about what was going to change. Very little changed. There was no panic. We pretty much concentrated on injury prevention because we lost our 2 best running backs to injury. We lost Warren Wells, an all-pro wide receiver, not to an injury, but we lost him for that total season. And we lost a couple of other starters throughout the season. We were very banged up. And I'm not trying to talk excuses here. I'm just talking fact. But the thing that surprised me is the demeanor that year. We were more concentrated. I think we all gave better effort because we were just so embarrassed. We wanted to concentrate on everybody doing our job and doing it well, making as few mistakes as possible. And Coach Madden in particular would talk quite a bit about penalties and injuries. From the injury standpoint, we just try to take care of ourselves, be sure we didn't do anything stupid in practice like falling into somebody's knee or something, and so on and so forth. And that was a good thing to me because I was really expecting the worst and a lot of pressure and so on and so forth. But another thing Coach Madden used to say is when you're talking about improving your team in the NFL, there's only a few ways you can do that. You can improve the players that you have. You can trade for better players or through the draft. Those are really the only three ways you can improve. And this gets me really to my last point. What does this current team need to do to get better and to make the playoffs? That's everybody's goal in the NFL. If you don't make the playoffs, you can't win a world championship. So you got to make those playoffs. There's a very fine line between playoff teams, non-playoff teams, and an even finer line between the winner of the two teams in the Super Bowl. And my philosophy has been for a long time, I don't care what level, whether it's Pop 1 or the pro, you got to have a championship quarterback. Now, I think we talked a little bit last time we had an opportunity to visit. Is Carr that guy? I don't know. I said then and I say now, I don't know. I think he has the ability, but there's a lot of rumors going around now that the Raiders may trade him. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen, but that is a possibility. But I think for the Raiders or really any team to get to those playoffs and to win Super Bowls, you got to start with a championship quarterback. Now, along with that quarterback, my opinion, one speed receiver is not enough. You got to have two guys that can get deep and stretch that defense. Because if you only have one, all those NFL teams are going to try to take that one speed receiver out of there by double teaming him, and then the rest of the receivers with the remaining DBs and linebackers, you can pretty much take your chances. So if you have a couple of guys that can spread the field and get down the field, you're giving yourself a chance. So I think that's what you got to have, especially in today's game. On offense, you got to have a championship quarterback with a couple of receivers who have speed. On defense, and I think the last 2 or 3 years will prove this to be true, those teams that can pressure the opposing quarterback with 4 players and defend with 7 have a chance. Because the NFL now, as everyone knows who knows anything at all about football, it's a passing game. And it's not uncommon to see 40 or 50 or a total of 90 to 100 passes could happen on any Sunday because that's what teams are doing now. They're throwing the football. So if you can pressure with 4, defend with 7, that gives you a chance on defense. On special teams, you've got to have solid kickers. I'm not saying they got to be great, but they got to be solid. They can't be shanking 12-yard punts. They can't be kicking the ball out of bounds with kickoffs. They've got to be very solid in the extra point field goal category. And if you've got solid kickers, you can surround them with good cover guys and good return guys and so on and so forth. They got to be solid. And in today's game, just as important as the other thing that we just mentioned, the coaching staff has got to be a coaching staff that thinks out of the box. What happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the way that most NFL team plays, that's not good enough anymore. You got to be very flexible. You got to be approachable with your players. You've got to listen to your players. And if the coaching staff is willing to do that, I think it puts everything else into play. It puts a very diversified defense in play. It puts an offense in play that's just crazy. The things you're doing, the kinds of passes and reverses and the option game and so on and so forth. And the last thing is probably the most important of anything we're going to talk about today. You got to avoid major injuries. If you don't avoid major injuries, anything can happen to you, as happened to the 71 Raiders and so many other teams. If you lose that starting quarterback, it's a toss-up as to what's going to happen from then on out. You lose your pass rusher. You lose your best receiver. Anything can happen to you. So For me, if the Raiders basically can have a championship quarterback, pressure with Thor, a really solid kicking game, and think out of the box, I think they can make the playoffs. And then that fine line comes into play, and whoever happens to play the best on those given Sundays will win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the Raiders needing an alpha dog. To me personally, I think that Derek Carr on the offense is that alpha dog. He's somewhere between, in my mind, a Brad Johnson and a Rich Gannon. All right, he can move like Gannon can. He's got a bigger arm than Gannon, though. He's got a Brad Johnson arm, but Brad Johnson wasn't that mobile. But both of those guys were cerebral quarterbacks as well, and I think Derek Carr is there too. Special teams, I believe that our special teams is fine. We could always improve, but they're not like the Achilles heel of the team. And then, of course, coaching, I like Gruden's philosophy. I know a lot of people call it conservative, and he does need to make some adjustments and use some of these other plays that other teams are successful with. But also, I think the key to Gruden's offense is that run game, because we all remember Zach Crockett, Tyrone Wheatley, Napoleon Kaufman, Charlie Garner, all those guys excelling in Gruden's offense. So I think with Josh Jacobs, he just needs that complimentary big back. That way, in the red zone, when the windows are smaller for the defenders, we can pound it in there, and they have to watch for that. But as far as the defense, in your mind, who was the toughest Raider ever on defense?
Well, I'm going to go back a long way. There was a guy who played with the Broncos by the name of Lyle Alzado, who also played a few years with the Raiders. I think his reputation speaks for itself. We had a player there who was about 6'2", about 260. His name was Tom Keating. Tom is one of the guys that lifted weights with the Raiders. He was a grown man. He didn't take any junk from anybody. We had another guy named Jack Tatum, whose reputation is also there. He would knock your helmet off. And there was another player who came from the Baltimore Colts to the Raiders for a little while. His name was Ted Hendricks. Now, I know for a fact those guys were as tough as anybody. But if we have a moment before we leave here, I want somebody to ask me about who was the toughest offensive player. Now, I agree with all the comments you made about Jacobs and the special teams and the coaching and so on and so forth. My only gray area, I'm going to come back to Carr. Is he the guy? That's a question I'm asking y'all.
Like I said, in my mind, I think so. Okay, because if you look at what Derek Carr has gone through, it shows mental strength. Okay, so year one, he loses his coach, and then he has to deal with another coach. Year two, he gets a new coach, new offensive coordinator. Year three is the most consistency he's had until Gruden came back. The JDR's third year, he had Downing, another change, and then he went with Gruden, and then they made a city change. And all the while, Derek Carr has broken the Raider quarterback record book, right? Except for wins, and that's what everybody's talking about. But if you look at it from this perspective, which is, I think, how a football coach would look at it. If you were to set a mark for your team to make the playoffs in the AFC West, you would have to start at 10-6. So if you set that mark and you take a look at the Raiders' record since Derek Carr has been there, 2 years are 7-9, and 1 year is 8-8, and then of course we had the 12-4 playoff year that Derek Carr got hurt in. And that's a total of 8 games that if went one way or the other, he would have 4 winning seasons compared to 3. Still, you know what I mean? But at the same time, the biggest number to look at, the most important number to look at when it comes to Derek Carr is the fourth quarter comebacks. All right? Because that's showing that he can put a team on his shoulders at the end of the game and drive down the field and score to win the game as easily as he can put a team on his back and junk yardage and move down the field. For me, I think he is that type of quarterback. It's just that, yes, he does need the right team around him. That is also the type of quarterback he is. But he can win a Super Bowl with the Raiders under Gruden, I believe.
All right, I just want to remind you that the last time we talked, I believe I told you I want him to be that guy.
Right.
I really do, because he has gone through a lot. He's gone through a lot of changes. And was it last year, about a third of the way into the season, or maybe halfway into the season, I believe he hurt his ankle, or somewhere along in the line he had that injury also.
Yeah.
And his mobility and I think confidence was a little bit less because he couldn't do the things that he was accustomed to doing. But I like him as a person. I think he was one of the first quarterbacks that I've ever seen when I watch TV. He wears his wedding band, and that means a lot to me. So I think he's a character guy. I think he's a very good player. But in my honest opinion, he's going to have a good year this year, or he's probably not going to be back.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
I want him to have that good year.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he is the man for the moment. I'm just really anxious to see what he does with any type of defense behind him.
I agree with that. Now, here again, if you don't mind, let me ask the panel this question. Let's try to go back to at least the last 3 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. Who were they?
Brady.
All right. Who won the Super Bowl the year before?
Mahomes.
Who won the year before that?
Did Brady win the year before that?
I want to say it was Brady.
I thought so.
Yeah. So Brady's won 2 out of the last 3.
Do you see the point I'm trying to make?
Oh, yeah.
Is Carr that kind of quarterback? Because guess what? Who does Kansas City have coming back at quarterback? Mahomes. Who do the Bucks have coming back at quarterback? Brady. And 3 out of the last 3 Super Bowls, those are your 3 winning quarterbacks. Now, let me say this to you. I don't want to put this out of perspective. I really like Carr. But to win a Pop Warner championship, you got to have that quarterback and that high school and that college and that pro. And I would really like to see Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders, make the playoffs.
Yeah, we're all hoping that Derek really comes back and has a good year and has a good defense behind him. So we're all pulling for that.
Absolutely.
Yep. If that happens, if the Vegas Raiders can make those playoffs, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Now, Drew, before I go on and ask my question, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and ask you. I kind of have it in my mind who I think it is, but who was that toughest Raider of all time that you think it was on offense?
There's no question. This man was an all-pro 12 to 14 times. He was the offensive center. His name was Jim Otto. Is that who you're thinking?
That's who I was thinking.
And if I'm not mistaken, they call him the Iron Man. Now, let me say something to the whole panel, but especially I want Heidi to understand this. This man played in the offensive line with some of the most vicious defensive linemen and linebackers who have ever played in the NFL. He played, Heidi, with the same face mask I wore as a wide receiver. The only adaptation Jim Otto played with on his helmet, we called it a horseshoe. It started in the middle top of his helmet, and it came down a couple of inches, and it looked like a U or a horseshoe.
Right.
Other than that, he played with a wide receiver face mask in a hellhole of humanity. And I think he only missed in his whole career probably less than an hour of playing time.
I've seen many, many pictures of Jim Otto's helmet, and I don't think I've ever seen or will ever see again a helmet that is as beat up and battle scarred as the one that he had.
Every time somebody brings up Jim Otto, I hear in my head, hit him from the sideline. Ooh, man, that guy was awesome.
He was, and if you were to see him in a coat and tie in a press room somewhere or a Raider after-game party or something like that, he's going to be dressed very professionally. But when you look at his face and his eyes, you're going to know this man has been in a bunch of wars. But he is soft-spoken. He's kind. His wife is dainty and polite and as sweet as she can be. And it would just be hard to pick him out as one of the greatest, not just of the Raiders, but one of the all-time greats who's ever come through the National Football League, Jim Otto.
And I think that's why he's referred to by most of Raider Nation as simply Mr. Raider.
Yep.
Right.
That is correct.
And he remains an Iron Man. He really does. I mean, he's so tough even today. Look at all the physical obstacles he's had, and he just overcomes it over and over.
What a treasure that we still have him having going all the way back to the 1960 season, his first season and the Raiders' first season, to still have him around. What a treasure.
Yeah, he's quite a guy, and I feel blessed to have not only to have been able to play with him, but to know him. Just a good man.
Yeah. Well, Drew, I've got another kind of a legacy question for you. Do you think that the NFL has finally become more accepting of the Al Davis legacy and that fans understand the importance of the Raiders organization more than they used to?
No. For me, that's a pretty easy question. Now, you guys probably saw it, the ESPN documentary that explained everything that Al Davis went through with the NFL and so on and so forth. We're talking 45, 50 years ago. I think unless today's fans saw that documentary, and I'm sure a bunch did, and I'm sure their opinion has changed somewhat. But you're talking about the Oakland Raiders, the team that most people love to hate. They don't care. They don't want any excuses. They just love to hate the Raiders. And me personally, I've already told you, I hold him in the highest regard, the highest esteem, because he gave a little old skinny boy from a little bitty college a big chance to play professional football. And I was never a great star because that injury took it away from me. I truly believe I may have been, I'll never know. But that's okay, because Al Davis gave me a chance. And I'll love him until the day I die. You know how I feel about Mark Davis. I want him to do exceptionally well. He's got big shoes to fill. But my personal opinion is most people who saw the documentary, unless they're huge Raider fans, they probably already forgotten it.
Yeah. And again, I think Al Davis wore that legacy well. He protected that legacy, and I think they kind of perpetuated it too, not just with the players, but with the fans and the media and everybody else. And I think he was proud of that.
Well, you know, when you are not afraid to stand up to one of the biggest, most outstanding corporations, if you will, in all the world, and slug it out with them, toe-to-toe at least twice, you got my respect.
Drew, I've got one more question for you. And, of course, we talked a little bit about this last time when you came on. But now we often hear mention of the term once a Raider, always a Raider. What has been your most cherished memory about being a Raider?
Well, I hate to repeat myself, but I think I just said it. Just having that opportunity. I dare say that you guys and gals, and anybody who is a true football fan, would not have given most anything to have the opportunity that I had, which was to play football for the then Oakland Raiders. That's the memory that I will always cherish. That journey of July of 1969 until I went to Cincinnati. I'll cherish every single moment, all the good, all the bad, many more good memories than bad ones, I will promise you. But I can't imagine anybody who loves football and could have played not cherishing those moments.
Well, Heidi and Homer, I don't know about you two, but one thing I cherish is having this jewel on our program again, not just once, but twice. Drew, thank you so much for taking us down memory lane again and sharing with everybody on not just this podcast, but our listening audience as well. Just the legacy, the history of the Raiders, and just how proud we all are to be connected with this organization in some way. Are there any other parting thoughts that you have for us?
I would just like to thank you guys and gal, because I've talked to you now in depth 2 times, and both times I can tell that all of you are very sincere in what you're trying to do, spreading the word about the Las Vegas Raiders now. And it's just nice to know that there are people on the East Coast who love that organization when they're in California, who love them now that they're in Las Vegas, and you're willing to do what you do to spread the word. Believe me, I appreciate what you do very much, and I thank you for what you do, and I've enjoyed my time with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed this walk through history with you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us again.
My pleasure. I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Drew, very much. We really appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Yeah, Drew, once again, man, it's a pleasure having you come on this channel. We definitely enjoy hearing your stories and your perspective on football and the Raiders, and we appreciate your honesty and you challenging us with questions of your own. We definitely look forward to having you come back on the Only Nation podcast.
I'm just proud of the fact that we have a guy who came in at the same time that John Madden came as coach. And I think right now we can officially say he's our guy. So, Drew, any time that you can come on the podcast with us, we are more than happy to hear your stories and all the history and legacy that you bring to this podcast and to Raider Nation. And we just thank you again for coming on with us.
You're my boy, Drew.
And I'm cheesy.
All right, let's have another edition of Heidi's High Five.
And now it's time for another Heidi's High Five.
All right, here's this week's version of Heidi's High Five. Number one, well, with the news about Gabe Jackson and Richie Incognito this week, the offensive line has suddenly become a priority. I hope that the Raiders are able to re-sign Richie to another year to help out those other young guards. It's time for young John Simpson to step up one way or the other. Number two, as much as I would like to believe that Trent Brown can make it back and be productive, I just can't trust the optics. I think we can do much better by diving into free agency and picking up a guy who is healthy and dependable. I wouldn't argue with drafting a guy, but I think this now has to be a priority for the Raiders during free agency. Number three, General Manager Mike Mayock has talked about bringing in foundational players and guys who are a Raider fit. Now, in order to create something really special, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, the Raiders need to focus on guys who are not just projects, but who are solid in their respective positions, and they need to be fully healthy. Number four, speaking of the defense, there's already been talk about the Raiders potentially drafting an impact safety in the first round. Now, this would be a mistake in my opinion. I say that Gus Bradley and company need to bring in a proven guy on the back end. Three guys I've been keeping an eye on and hearing a lot about are Richard Sherman, Marcus Williams, and Marcus May. And number five, I will say that aside from bringing in a proven safety, the interior defense needs to be addressed in a big way. If the Raiders can bring in one or two guys on lesser deals, we may not be talking about Leonard Williams, but perhaps a guy like his current teammate, Dalvin Tomlinson, maybe also Malcolm Brown or Kawan Short, and combine that with a pick in the first round. You heard it from me, a defensive line first-round pick. I think those are the next right steps for this team. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this week's version of Heidi's High Five.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Here we go. Number one, right? Yet again, another offensive line shuffle. We talk about maybe plugging, a quarterback in or trading Derek Carr or whatever. I don't think another quarterback's going to come in with this much instability and be able to do well. This is a shuffle. That's why I thought it was a mistake to let go of Gabe Jackson. That guy's been guarding Derek Carr for a long time. So hopefully we can get Good back, who's used to working with Tom Cable, and Tom Cable is working magic with. But this is yet another shuffle of the offensive line, another adjustment that Derek Carr is going to have to deal with. But hopefully the coaches know what they're doing. They can get this all lined out. And then this Richard Sherman one, number four, absolutely. I think we need to get a safety or a free safety in free agency this year. I know we talked about drafting defense first, and I think that's the majority of what we need to continue to do. But a Richard Sherman can come in and be that alpha dog on the defense. He doesn't have as much speed, but he knows the system, and he can help Arnett and Mullen on the side. I think that would be a great signing. And then yes, first round, 17th overall, if we don't move up, get the best available defensive tackle right then and right there. We want that defensive tackle, that pass rusher on a 4 to 5 year contract with some options that benefit the team. You know what I mean? And so we need that. Richard Sherman come in a couple years, train our DBs, give us another year or two to get out of this COVID situation with all the drafting like that, and then get a back-end guy at safety maybe the following year or something like that. But as Raider Nation, we're going to have to be patient. It's obvious that John Gruden's here for the long haul. for the next 10 years. He's not going anywhere. People talk about there being a burner, all this and this the year. He's on the bubble. No. He's not going anywhere. They're redoing this whole deal. They're going to do it the way that they need to do it. So let's hope that it works out because we need a Super Bowl.
That impact safety doesn't make that big of an impact until we can get some pressure on the line.
Absolutely.
So I totally agree. Defensive tackle is where it's at. We need to get somebody who can put some pressure on the opposing quarterback. Quarterback must go down, and he must go down hard.
The guy that I have on the top of my list, I have my fingers crossed, is Alabama defensive tackle Christian Barmore.
He's a name I've heard floated a lot. Give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave us a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media, and we'll share your thoughts. And now it's time for another Homer Did You Know?
Hey Homer, did you know?
All right, now it's time for another edition of Hey Homer, Did You Know? In this segment, I will ask Homer and the rest of our listening audience a Raiders-related question with 3 possible answers to choose from. It's multiple choice, so just give it your best guess. So here goes. Here's this week's question. This week's guest on the podcast, Drew Buie, was drafted by the Raiders in 1969. 2 other starters came from that draft as well. Now I'm going to name 3 players. All 3 were Raiders starters, but only 2 of them came from that 1969 draft. See if you can pick the one who wasn't from that draft. Was it A, defensive lineman Art Toms, B, offensive lineman George Beeler, or C, running back Marv Hubbard? Homer, what do you think?
Man. Well, this is where I usually get my Heidi's hint, right? So, do I get a hint, Heidi? Do you know the answer?
I do not know the answer.
Oh, well, so much for that.
Sorry.
I'll just go with B.
Okay, so Homer goes with George Beeler.
And I'm going to go with C, Marv Hubbard.
Heidi, you are correct again. Running back Marv Hubbard was drafted in 1968, and I think we referred to this on a previous podcast. His initial year in the league, he wore number 39, and then the next year in 1969, when Drew came in, he switched to the number 44. So the answer is running back Marv Hubbard, drafted in 1968. Woohoo! And that is this week's version of Hey Homer, Did You Know?
I almost said that. I almost picked C. Maybe we'll change, though, the name of this segment to Heidi versus Homer. Because she's on a 2-week win streak, and I'm feeling a little upset here. She came in and stole my segment, y'all.
Sorry.
Maybe we should just change the name of the segment to The Answer Is Always C.
Hey, that I can get right every time.
No, that was fun.
All right, and that's a wrap for this week. We want to thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, and we want to thank our special guest, Drew Buie. Please give us a call and give us your feedback on interviews, our takes, and share your takes. We'll even get you on the show. If you'd like to help support the show, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KevlarPromDress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook.
You know, I do like coffee, so come on, Raider Nation. If you think we're worth it, buy us a coffee. 32-ounce Texas pecan.
It's like $4.
Black. Oh, sorry. Well, okay. Just let us know. Anyways, Raider Nation, we want to hear from you, all right? Give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave us a voicemail. Send us a text message. You can even email us at onlynationpod@gmail.com. All right, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Leave us a comment. Just go to @onlynationpod. We're also on Facebook and YouTube at the Only Nation Podcast. Be sure to hit like and follow us wherever you catch us on social media. And subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting apps and toss us a 5-star review if you think we're up to it. And you can also find me, Raider Homer, by going to theraiderhomerchannel.buzzsprout.com, and all my information is there.
And I want to remind you once again how important it is for the growth of this show for us to get your input. So send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget that we can use on one of our upcoming episodes and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the only nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us, 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. You can find me on social media, on Twitter at T3_sports703, on YouTube at T3 Sports Guy, and on Facebook at Tom Thom Jones.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, go Raiders.
Go Raiders.
Raiders.
Okay, that's a wrap.